This is what happens when creators know how to use special effects. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. I think we were all on tenterhooks about the Yu Yu Hakusho. One Piece gave us hope, and pretty much everything else gave us fear. But today we're going to take the first fully spoilery look at Yu Yu Hakusho Season 1, Episode 1. Let's not bury the lead. Is this just another trashy Netflix live-action remake? No, 1,000 times no. Now, I've only just watched the first episode, but it did something that no other live-action remake has done. It proved to me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it knows the source material, that it enjoys the source material, and that it is proud to be descended from that source material. Put simply, I liked this live-action remake of Yu Yu Hakusho. Despite the fact that I despise change, despite the fact that I am not the biggest fan of live action in general, despite the fact that I kind of detest anything that has even a hint of being a high school drama, I liked it. Now, we are going to jump right into the spoilers as soon as we start talking about the CGI, because we can't even talk about the CGI without getting into major plot elements. That's how tightly everything is woven together. So, before we do that, I am going to give you a chance to click away from this video in case you don't want any spoilers by reminding you to check out the links below the video to get yourself a copy of one of my books. Humans Are Weird, short, absurd science fiction stories fill up the 3 books now available wherever books are sold. Now, spoilers. You have been warned. Let's start, as the show does, with some special effects. If I had to sum up the CGI in this show, or just the special effects in general, I would say the guiding principle was quality over quantity and knowing its place. See, every type of special effect has its own strengths and weaknesses. One of the major weaknesses of CGI is that CGI creations have no physical weight. They cannot interact with the world around them in a physical way. However, in this series, there is a handy loophole that the creators make full use of. Namely, the majority of the spirit beings in the story in canon don't interact with the human world either, essentially being beings of, say, light. Now, how is this a spoiler? Well, the first in-universe monster we see is one of the brain control worms flying up and out of this massive, very real physical sinkhole in the middle of the city. The fact that this happens in the very first episode tells us a lot story-wise going right in. It means that the entirety of the first 40-ish chapters of the manga, from where Yusuke dies to where he goes on his first mission with Hiei and Kurama, is going to be essentially cut out. Or rather, it's been compressed into 1 hour-long episode, which was predictable. Looking back, those first 40 chapters were basically character development for Yusuke and Kuwabara, and I think that a lot of us, I certainly did, assumed that the majority of those story arcs would be cut. The kitten arc, the puppy arc, the test arc, all gone. Poof. The live-action version instead focuses on tight, clear writing and direction that establishes their characters in the first episode. We know this as soon as we see the brainworm because, again, we don't get to that story until after Hiei and Kurama show up. And let's talk about the brainworm itself. It was CGI-wise, it was very well done. We get detailed close-ups of the brainworm in full natural daylight. That is something that the show can afford to do with the brainworm because it is a very alien-looking creature and the human brain does not have a good mental image of it. You don't have to worry about things like the human eye being able to spot the fact that the light is not refracting through human skin in the way you would with a natural human face. It looks good because we, the audience, have nothing to compare it to. Therefore, our first impression of the show's CGI is that it is top-notch, and those first impressions matter. There are also little details like how when the brainworm takes over a host, it sheds its wings, which from a natural science perspective, if this were a real creature, it makes a logical sense. It is entering a different phase of life now and doesn't need those wings now that it has a host. It was just a natural science touch that they really did not have to do. I was not expecting it from the show. Then there are what I think are the practical effects. There is the iconic scene where Yusuke gets run over by the truck. Spoilers. But the manga and the anime shied away from showing too much. And I was fully expecting the live action adaptation to do the same. That kind of scene, all violence aside, the physics of a vehicle running over a human, of a human body reacting to those forces, it is incredibly hard to do right. And because there is a human body involved, the uncanny valley is always dangerously close. It is too easy for the human eye to spot when something is inaccurate. Think back to every action shot you've seen where the camera pans back to a long distance shot, you see something violent happen to a human, the body goes flailing, and you know instantly that is a mannequin. It's extremely easy to tell, but these creators just did not care about how difficult it was going to be. They fixed that camera on Yusuke, and we get to watch that truck run him over and spit him out in high definition. The physics were dang near perfect as far as I can tell. That 110% looked like a human body getting run over by a lightweight cargo truck. Not that I've actually ever seen that, but you know what I mean. If that was CGI, the physics engine must have been overclocking on those body movements. If that was a prop, the prop master who designed the joint movement deserves a major award. It looked real. This excellent use of special effects was my first impression of the show. Well, that, and the fact that you should not try to listen to the subbed version. The voice acting for the English actors in the first few minutes of the show, which was all I was able to listen to, was bad enough that I genuinely started to suspect that the voices were AI generated. They were all bland, low emotion, generic. So I switched to the subbed version, and instantly I was reading more emotions in the versions, despite not knowing a word of Japanese. Seriously, if you can stand reading the subtitles, if that's something you can do, do it. The English version, as of January 16th, 2024, was bland and dull. The Japanese version was full of subtle emotion. Meanwhile, the show is cutting back between the spirit worm and Yusuke attending school in his flashback at this point in the show. And, now mind, I am not saying this is an inherently bad problem or even a technically bad problem with the show, but I had actually forgotten how much I detest seeing live action high school scenes in any movie or show. I refrain from giving an analysis on how good or bad the scenes in the school are because I cannot be a fair judge. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I've taught in high schools before and it left an indelible mark on me, but The inevitable bullying scene also seemed to be well acted and something that would actually reasonably play out in real life. But I am so done with that trope that I refuse to analyze it on technical merit, as just as with the bullying scene in Gamera Rebirth, I just found it irritating. I will, however, say that the one true concern I have with the show appeared for the first time in this scene. See, instead of showing that Yusuke was taking advantage of the bully's actions to run a protection racket, the creators just have him rescue the victim straight up like a classic high school hero. Now, on the one hand, they are compressing 40 chapters into one episode here. So I can see how the extra bit about Yusuke Protection Incorporated might simply get cut due to time constraints. However, when Kiko confronts him about this later, she talks like he was simply rescuing the victim on principle. I am a little afraid that the show is trying to clean Yusuke up, make him a more traditional hero rather than the chaotic neutral punk that he was in the manga. Sure, they show him defying authority at every level, but so far they've left out the groping, the extortion ring, and Koenma's analysis of his energy being neither good nor evil, just random and chaotic. Maybe that will come later, but are they heroing up Yusuke a bit? Maybe. On the one hand, this might just be the compression. As I expected, we skipped the first 40 chapters of world building and character development between the Worm Brain saga and the initial death. I don't think he was surprised by that. I loved the Ghost Dog story arc in particular, but it really wasn't necessary. So trimming Yusuke's opportunistic protection racket could just be a cut for time. I really hope they don't try to clean him up too much. The fact that he was a chaotic neutral punk was one of my favorite parts about him. And the show, and then the show kind of sort of does something similar with Hiei when he's introduced, but we'll get to that later. This review of this one episode turned out to be a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to have to tell you to hit that like and subscribe button. If you want more, check in next week for the part 2. Go check out the links below the video to get yourself a copy of my book if you like what you have heard, and peace out, my wonderful viewers. Humans Are Weird, we took a vote. The second book of Human Absurdity is now available in audiobook format everywhere where audiobooks are sold: Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Kobo by Rakuten, and of course, Audible and Amazon. So you can now get a copy of the audiobook format of all 70,000 words of Human Absurdity.